At Say Hi to the Future, we believe exploring and nurturing human ingenuity is a leadership imperative. It must be sought and can be honed in every leader. I'm your host, Saquib Vali, Explorers Say Hi to the Future, the fast-growing community highlighting the human side of ingenuity. Our guest today is Chris Giorgianni, Vice President, Product at JCB North America, where he has global responsibility for JCB's skid steer loader range, leads the North America product team, and is responsible for JCB's government and defense businesses globally. There's so much to unpack here. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for taking time out from your precisely excavated schedule.
I appreciate that. A pleasure to be on your podcast.
So, Chris, let's let our listeners hear in your voice how you wish to introduce yourself to them. And as you do, please do demystify things that our listeners might get wrong about the heavy equipment industry.
Well, yeah, and you did an excellent job of introducing me, but I will just kind of expand on that a little bit. I was a Pittsburgh kid, had no idea what I wanted to be in my life, and as I went through high school, I wanted to be a dentist. That was my dream job. Coming from a family of firefighters, and to be honest with you, fate got me into the Air Force Academy. Got me into the military, and after 5 years, opted for a career change after my service obligation was complete. And again, by chance, got into the construction equipment industry for 5 years with a competitor before coming to JCB. I've been a person who's always said yes and then thought about it afterwards. I always never shied away from a challenge, and I think getting into the construction equipment industry and my journey there has been a lot of that. I will say, when you look at the construction equipment industry, the heavy equipment industry, it's a complex yet simple industry. It's a small industry when you compare it against other opportunities as well. But the complex in the fact that you've got a variety of technical solutions, that you offer customers to ultimately allow them to put food on the table for them, whether it's digging a hole with a large excavator, moving a lot of earth around to build, site develop. And you do that a lot of different ways. We do it with traditional diesel power, but we also have got a lot of alternative energy solutions as well. So you get very complex with electric and hydrogen combustion as well. So it's a very complex industry, but then very simple, because I routinely tell my guys, we're not building rocket ships to send people to the moon. This is a blocking and tackling business. Do what you say you're going to do. That will go a long way. We don't always have all the answers. So again, if you make a commitment, live on that commitment, because that will get you a lot further along in business than trying to solve every item and not think about the problem before offering a solution.
It might not be that you're building rockets, but at the same time, now that we are going to go to the moon and Mars, we might need heavy equipment there.
Yeah, absolutely could do. There's definitely opportunities to move. I would say move Earth, but move Moon and Martian landscape, if that ever comes to fruition. I'm sure JCB will be there as well.
Oh, I'm sure. And by the way, yesterday was reading through. You guys just got yourself a major new contract, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. That was the gestation for military business is a lot longer than commercial business. You typically, you transact with the customer. It's fairly quick. It may be days or weeks, but with our military partners, it's a lot longer process, if you will. And that was a culmination of many years of work and showing our product and demonstrating and being at trade shows, and ultimately that resulted in a hard-fought win, but one that we're very proud of.
And that deserves a congratulations to you, to your team, to JCB. I mean, that's fantastic. So well done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So, Chris, one of the provocations Say Hi to the Future explores is this notion of find your voice. So take us through your journey and an example from one of your professional endeavors, and weave into it how effectively distilling the signal from the noise played a pivotal role. It could be in the most recent example that we just spoke about or anywhere else.
So if I reflect on my career, and really anybody's career, there's not you don't there's I think there's majors now, but you don't major in the construction equipment industry, right? So you're coming into this industry with no. I mean, I was a chemistry major, as you introduced me at, and you know, coming into this business, it was you're learning. You have no. I had no background outside if you consider Tonka toys as something that allowed me to gain an interest in it. But outside of that, there was no experience that I had. And every step in the journey, you have to be risk taking in some respects and put yourself outside of outside of your comfort zone, if you will, because you're learning every day. And I'm not saying every industry is like that, but specifically on our space, you're learning. You know, you start off and not knowing, you know, technical, you're not knowing the customer, you don't know the processes and such, and you've got to be risk taking. And I made it the comment in the beginning, you know, I say yes, and then you kind of figure it out, you know, in a lot of respects. You got to have that. I think having that in your DNA definitely gives you an advantage to be able to do different things. And as an example, one from my standpoint, and I can touch upon, you know, the most recent, you know, information in regards to our military win. But if I reflect on myself, I'm a closet introvert. I mean, again, you look at my history. Being a chemistry majors typically aren't the most extroverted folks out there. No disrespect to any chemistry majors listening, but I was, you know, when I realized my dental career wasn't gonna take off, you know, that attracted to me. I enjoyed it, solitary kind of, you know, not say solitary, but you know, you know, a career that maybe didn't have a lot of interface with a lot of different people. And when I found myself in this industry, and you kind of learn to be, you know, to be more comfortable in front of folks, and you start to come out of your shell a little bit. I remember my first time I ever got offered a sales role. I never saw myself as a salesperson at all. And I was overseas, and my boss, actually my boss at the time, moved to run a sales part within the JCB organization. He said, "Hey," he goes, he gave me an opportunity to step into the sales side." And I remember telling my wife that, you know, I said yes, we'll figure it out, right? But you know, you know, getting from, you know, where I was at in college, and really, you know, happy with more of an introverted type career, to now I'm talking to customers where English isn't their first language in a lot of respects, and learning the art of selling in a foreign land. And it was really kind of one to where I was happy I did it. I was very nervous the first couple of months because you know, forecasting, you know, order plans, the order to delivery process, selling, you know, talking about features and benefits, and convincing folks to or convincing, you know, distributors and dealers to take your product on, but then also convincing end using customers that, hey, this machine is going to help you make more money, to put more food on your table, and to help you be prosperous. You know, I'm learning all of that on the fly. And there's no ad, you can't eat the elephant in one bite. So I'm trying to do this but I don't necessarily have a playbook or a operations manual I'm going off of. I'm kind of learning and doing. And I think having that, you know, willingness to just try to, you know, step out of your boundary and try new things, and learn, that can really accelerate one's, you know, career, but to allow them to, you know, advance into being a leader within an organization, whether it's an organization with the construction and equipment industry, or any type organization.
I was intently listening to your story because it is fascinating. I don't know if we had ever thought about finding your voice, or find your voice as a concept, could also be a compensatory mechanism. So how you said you're a closeted introvert, but the way you came at it, you found your own voice was say yes, and we'll figure it out later. That was your way of compensating for you knew yourself so well that you said, okay, this is going to be my way of getting into it. And look at what it has done for you. Like, it's just amazing. It's awesome. Um, you don't have a playbook. You get into it and you write the playbook as you go. That risk taking is part of how you define find your voice for you personally. Let me expand on that a bit more, which is this has worked exceptionally. This one specific mechanism of find your voice has worked exceptionally well for you. How do you think about that when you were with your team and people whom you need to coach?
I think from my standpoint, when I look at the people on my team, and I've been very fortunate. I've got a strong, I want to say strong front line, but I've got responsibility on a few very different parts of the business. You know, the government defense business is very a regimented business. The customer is very, all customers are demanding, right? But the defense space, the customers, I would say, are maybe a slightly different, you know, higher demand, and rightfully so, where a lot of equipment, you know, is to support the soldier and sailor and such. But I've got that aspect. I've got a product aspect, which is more the interface between the manufacturing business units, whether they're here or they're in the UK, but also is that interface to the customer. And then I've got the skid steer bit. So you're looking at folks that have got different, skill sets, different approaches to business. And I think for me, it's when you look at your talent, you want them to, I mean, this is going to sound a bit daft, but you want them to fail to learn and to take risks. Because our business is a very fast-paced business. I don't micromanage in that regards. I let them kind of work through the problems, and sometimes it may not be the most elegant solution. Sometimes, hey, we got it wrong, we need to go back and try it again. But that learning is critical. And just as I did growing up in the industry, is you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna make a lot more mistakes and than you like to think going into it. But that's how you learn. That's how you become an effective leader. When I look at the team, especially as we bring the younger guys and gals into the business as well, you look for folks that have gotten. We always say the intangibles. You can teach the business, right? You can teach. I mean, I always it's a very rudimentary example, but suck, squeeze, bang, blow. Those are the 4 basic principles of it, right? Distilled down to the very, very rudimentary description, but you can teach all that, but you can't teach drive, determination, motivation. Those are things. So when I look at like the team that I bring on, and really, and I think JCB is very much a lot of our DNA is like that. We want those folks that have got those intangibles, because there's going to be an element of, all right, they're going to get into it and work through whatever challenge is to learn and grow in the business and become a more effective leader in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I think the other aspect of what you mentioned was how you enable your people to find their voice, is by allowing them to make mistakes and helping them steer through that. So that's fantastic. I'd also like to get your leadership take on Ingenuity, and more importantly, the human side of Ingenuity as it relates to you, your organization's success. What's your take? When has it worked well? When has it not? What have you learned?
I think some of the more interesting and the bigger ideas sometimes have come from folks that probably have got the least experience. When you look at, because when you want new, fresh ideas, sometimes you get into a bit of groupthink to where you get that tunnel vision where you're only looking at a problem from one perspective. I think sometimes this is where I would say that I always consider myself to be the newer generation. The reality is I've been in the business long enough now, but the newer generation coming into the business, they're seeing the problem wide open there, and they'll see things that I won't see because 25 years worth of of experience will tell me, okay, I can discount these bits, but sometimes you miss some of those gems that are outside the periphery. And I think encouraging wherever you're at in the business space is to encourage that thinking. It's an overused expression, but that outside the box thinking, because when somebody doesn't have those experiences, they don't necessarily have those guardrails that will cause them to miss maybe some neat ways to solve a problem, or maybe more efficient ways to solve a problem, or maybe identify new opportunities out there that we don't necessarily see, because we're seeing it in more of a traditional space. I mean, I try to force myself beyond that as well, but that's where I think, especially I see it with our product specialists coming through the business as well, because typically the product team, this is their, they'll spend some time here before they go into a sales role, another role that grows their experience and within the JCB organization. But the young guys and gals that come through, you can see that they're looking at this, and there's no limitations to kind of what they're how they're viewing the problem.
So let me ask you, I love the thought and the conversation here. What's your mechanism for encouraging those voices to bubble up, right? So that's one. And then the second one is, how do you deal with the tension between the more experienced people saying, that won't work, we've tried it before, versus the new voices that are saying, could we try it once more time and do it differently this time? So both those things, how do you do that at JCB, especially in your product line business, which is what you lead?
I think healthy tension is a good thing in a lot of respects. You don't want to you want to have some balancing out. I think I think our culture as a company helps in that regards, because it's not, I'm not just talking within my space. I think we encourage that healthy dialogue, because again, it's a true statement. Some of those outside the box ideas are outside the box, because it won't, there will be limitations on how you can execute, or you can execute it, but it's not necessarily cost effective. That's where you got to kind of balance the business side of it as well. I mean, I've got a engineering colleague that told me a long time ago, anything's possible. Is a customer willing to pay for it, right? So sometimes, having that, to be able to work through, but that's, that tension allows the more seasoned person to kind of expand a little bit if their vision is narrowed, and it helps the younger person learn kind of, all right, how can I develop my thought process and thinking in that lines up a little bit more with where the industry is. So I do think that's positive. And like an example from our side, we've got, the team here interfaces with the customer. They interface, when we say our first tier, second tier customers, they're going to interface with the end user. They're going to interface with the dealers. They're going to interface, but also with the engineers and the business units who manufacture the product. And sometimes an engineer's got a great idea that's not practical, or sometimes a customer's got another solution that will cause a significant redesign, and that collaboration is what helps make our product better. It helps make our services better, and that's what you want. You want that healthy dialogue.
I understand. And so, we've been having a conversation around dynamics. And now let's talk about dynamism in how you build that leadership. So what do you look for, groom for, nurture in people you hire, or advise management of the boards you serve on?
I think for me, it's I look for the intangibles. I've over the years, I've been fortunate to be involved in the hiring process of a lot of talented individuals. And when you look at some, success isn't necessarily, in general, I would say the more somebody demonstrated those intangibles, as I mentioned, the drive, and when you look at their resumes, and when they talk about, when you're interviewing with them face to face, is having those the commentary around, again, those like them being a driven individual, having being motivated to do different things, trying, risk takers. I think having that kind of, that foundation, as I said, we can teach the business. It's not, we're a complex yet simple business. We can teach all those nuances, but you can't teach those intangibles to the employees. And if you don't have, you could be a brilliant engineer, you could be the best salesman in the world, but if you don't have the drive, determination, motivation, willingness to do a good job, willingness to try new things, it does. You can limit your career path for sure, but I think also you may limit yourself on the opportunities that are out there, because, as I said, businesses have got to continue to evolve. You can't always, our founder is saying jamais content, never content. You can't. So, but and part of being never content is continuing to evolve the business. And if you don't have those innate skills and those intangibles, it's hard to do that.
For sure. I mean, at Procter, we used to call it a healthy dissatisfaction with the status quo, which is exactly the same as jamais content. I think that's a great one. I do want to move the conversation a bit towards an area that, because I was reading up on the Lady Bamford Center, and I was, in some cases, I was tearing up. In some cases, I was motivated, emotional, all of that was there. So give us your thought. How did you get involved there? What was the spark? What was your inspiration, as your role as the chair of the board of trustees?
Well, I'll say I started out, and you'll laugh. I started out as an elf for a Christmas celebration that we do every year, and I was this probably goes back to 2007, 2008, and typically what we do, somebody here would dress up as Santa Claus, and then a bunch of the younger guys, back when I had less gray hair, would dress up as elves, and we'd go down and hand presents out to the children of Lady Bamford Center. And that was my first exposure. In the Lady Bamford Center wherever JCB goes, we've got plants globally, in UK, India, obviously US, Brazil, etc. But wherever we go, we try to give back to the community locally, because again, our success wherever we're at is dependent on a strong community. And in West Savannah here in Georgia, the Lady Bamford Center is, the focus of Lady Bamford Center is to serve the community by offering, child services, education to children from 6 weeks through pre-K. So it really kind of gives the children a good foundation and sets them up for success in the school system here, but also allows the parent, and typically most from a very disadvantaged or single parent background, allows them to go out for employment and to be able to provide as well. So it's kind of a win-win in that regards. And when I was first exposed to it, I'm dressed up in a less than flattering elf outfit, and handing out presents with the kids. And you see, and for me, the hook was the smile on their face. These kids they're great. They come up and the grinning ear to ear. And I've got children as well. And you start thinking, one, how fortunate that we are, but then also you see how a small gesture that positivity has on that child. So that's really kind of got me that initial exposure. And then of course I was an elf a few more years, and then an opportunity presented itself I got promoted to Santa Claus. So I started actually being Santa. So I'll get to obviously the board in a second, but so that I kept getting involved, and then I
is that just because the elf put on some weight? No, I'm sorry.
I think a little bit of that, and we had we had gone through a few Santa Clauses, and again, I'm a risk taker, right? I've no problem. I'll set any fears aside, and I graduated to Santa Claus, and at that point, that was about 10 years ago now. I also had an opportunity because we a lady here, Miss Debbie, that was part of the board at the time. She assisted the board. She had suggested, hey, I mean, you've been involved in this a couple of years. Why don't you join the board? So I joined as a board member at large, and then got to see it from the other side in regards to working with a lot of the community leaders and really you get into, all right, making sure we've got the funds to be able to keep the Lady Bamford Center, running effectively and serving community, be able to expand and offer, exceptional services to the kids. As time went on, probably about 5-6 years ago now, the previous board chair had left the business. He was with JCB, and I was asked to take over. And so it's been kind of a gradual, growth within the organization, and to where I've been in that role now, as I would say, about probably 5-6 years now. And for me, it's a great balance. It's the industry can be stressful and work and all that stuff, and you've got days where you're high-fiving folks on the way out of the office because you had a great day. Obviously, we announced yesterday the contract that we've secured, so that's fantastic. But then there's other days that, wow, it's been a tough day. You got a lot of things. Every time everything goes right, so you're kind of balancing that. But having that, being able to be a part of the Lady Bamford Center as well as it gives you good levity, and it gives you good balance there. But we've had, we've been able to do a lot. We've had to manage the COVID. That was a challenge. That was we've been blessed with very, very good donors so we were in a good financial position. But when COVID hit, we were managing almost on a month-to-month basis to make sure that we had the funds to be able to do the mission. Obviously, and the amount of children was reducing, because a lot of folks were keeping people at home as well. And be able to manage through that was very rewarding, because we came out of that stronger, and then we've been able to start seeing the kids come, a bigger volume of children come back now. And as I said, it's just, and we've had our first children now graduate and are going to college now as well. So you can see kind of how we've been able to take the children from very early age and give them a good foundation. Now we're starting to see some of the earlier children now get into college and continue their growth, to continue the growth in their education is very rewarding. And for me, that's, you see the impact that you're having. I mean, that for me, you can't put a price tag on that. And yes, I am still Santa Claus as well. So,
it's just hearing you throughout this time, there's a thread that gets woven into all the different pieces that you're speaking about. You said you're a closeted introvert. You say yes, and that's your coping mechanism, and then you'll figure it out later. You found your voice that way. You look for intangibles when you're looking for leaders. The Lady Bamford Center is, yes, it's a different kind of, but it's also a way of developing those intangibles. And then that kind of ties it back to, that's what JCP does in every region, geography that you are in. And that's part of the JCP culture. It is how you develop those intangibles as well. So, I mean, it's just inspiring listening to all of this and how it all comes together. So it's been fantastic. Any advice to other leaders?
I don't claim to have the right recipe, because I make mistakes as well. But I think it's given your team members that opportunity to fail, to learn, to make decisions, feel empowered. I think letting them grow and develop, and kind of, I'll use one aviation, example as I'm summarizing. Is, remember when I was getting my pilot's license back when the year started with a 1. Remember my flight instructor telling me, trust the instruments, because sometimes as a student pilot, you can find yourself and you get spatial disorientation. You get looking outside and you may not, realize that the plane's in a dive or spin or whatnot. And he always said, trust the instruments. It's that 6-pack that I referred to in the beginning. And your team members, in some respects, are those instruments. Trust the instruments. Trust that you've hired them for the reasons. For me, I hired them for those intangibles. Trust the instruments to develop. And okay, you got to give that bit of rudder guidance along the way. but trust your team to grow. And as I said, I'm fortunate, and I think there's a lot of strong leaders at JCB because that's that we've allowed them to grow within the organization, do different things, get tapped on the shoulder to try something that they may not necessarily see, but they can thrive in that role because they're going to learn, So I think for me is trusting your team to develop and kind of give them that little bit of guidance along the way.
This has been a fascinating conversation, Chris. It's been a pleasure having it with you. Lots and lots of insights and that I'm sure our listeners can unpack in this. Before we end it, though, what I wanted to do was I came into this with a certain set of questions and, I've been navigating the conversation that way. But you might have come into this with some thought in your mind that just because of my questions, you never got to say it. Is there anything, I'll give you the last word, anything that you've got that our listeners could benefit from?
I think for me is especially as I've gotten older now, is as a leader, but finding balance. And you kind of drew that out of me with the questions regarding the Lady Bamford Center is being an effective leader. If this is the only thing you're doing and you don't have that balance, that life balance, I think that could ultimately impact your ability to lead. I mean, as I use myself as an example, I am involved in the community with a few different items that are not JCB related, right? The Lady Bamford Center, which it's tied to JCB, but it's got a different mission. Coastal Georgia Military Affairs Coalition. We advocate for the local military installations here in Southeast Georgia. Savannah Council World Affairs looking at trying to get the college age kids exposure to the world outside of the coastal empire here. I help coach baseball for my son's team. It's having those things that kind of draw you out, because if I spend all my time focused on one thing, it just drives that tunnel vision even further. And that's something I try to also encourage is, we've got a mission to do here, and that we're compensated to do that mission, and we can't lose sight of that. But we also to maintain that healthy balance. And as I said, I think you drew that out a bit with the Lady Bamford Center, but that's probably a parting comment is that for me, no, young Chris probably didn't see that as much, but I learned. I mean, you learn and grow, and you want to be able to have those be involved in your community. Ask your team. Don't just discuss the mission with your team. Get to know your team. Know, because and not just for window dressing, but really understand likes, dislikes, their family and such, because the more you know about it, it's more that family that's a military cohesion, right? You want that cohesion. Yeah. And if you're not drawing that out, I think that's probably the other item I'd probably mention.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've said to myself, to my two girls that I'm bringing up, but also in as a leader and how I have the conversation is, identity is not what I do, it's who I am, right? And so mission is critical, 100%. No one's denying that. But at the same time, you can't be just the mission of what you do every day. It's got to be a lot bigger than that. So thanks a lot. Thank you, Chris, for your time. This has been fantastic. I'm sure our listeners would like to hear more from you. We will tag you and the organizations you represent in our show notes. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
The Say Hi to the Future podcast series is produced by Sonia Romero, edited by Matt Miller, and special effects by Edward Vasquez. Please leave us your thoughts and let us know if there is a leader you want us to have a conversation with next.